You make the same claim as your wife, do you not, that you stayed in all day on the day of the robbery?
Yes.
You often stay at home all day?
Not often. Occasionally.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
Well, why do you stay in all day? Any specific reason?
Well, does there have to be?
I'm asking the questions, Mr. Bryant.
No, there's no specific reason. Well, don't you? Doesn't anyone stay indoors all day just because they feel like it?
Well, most people are at work or about their business during the day, especially on a weekday.
Well, I wasn't just sitting about. I was writing some business letters, sorting through invoices. I settled a few bills, things like that.
You pay your bills by cheque?
Yes.
So if you wrote a few business letters and signed cheques to send off to your creditors, you would have dated them?
Naturally.
Who did you write to?
Well, I can't remember offhand. I write quite a few business letters.
Do you make copies?
Sometimes, depends how important they are.
And were these important business letters?
I don't know. I don't honestly remember.
I would have thought you would have had a chance to remember every single incident of that day, Mr. Bryant, considering its importance in your life.
Why are you asking these questions? I don't see what you're driving at.
Simply this, Mr. Bryant. If what you say is true, it would have been a simple matter for you to have produced the cancelled cheques or copies of the letters you purport to have written in order to support your story that you were home that day.
Well, the answer to that is I would have if I'd have thought of it.
Well, I'm sure his lordship will allow someone, your wife perhaps, to go home and get these things, if they exist at all.
Well, I don't mind, but I don't see what it'll prove.
I will give you the opportunity to produce these documents, Mr. Bryant. If you do not, Mr. Logan can comment on it. If you do, it may assist you.
Well, if I do produce them, my lord, he'll simply say that I post-dated the cheques and wrote any dates I wanted to on the letters.
Nevertheless, it is something that could substantiate your story, is it not?
Well, hardly, my lord.
So that leaves us as we were before. Just you and your wife's word that you were home all day.
Yes.
And that's hardly enough either, is it?
My wife's not a liar.
But you are?
Well, we all tell lies sometimes, but on this occasion I'm not lying.
Your wife lied about being in all day, didn't she?
She didn't lie. She just forgot that she'd taken my daughter to school. Well, anyone could do that. It's a habit, something you do every day. It's unconscious. It's not fair to say that she was lying.
And it's not fair to ask her to lie either, is it?
I didn't ask her to lie.
Oh, come now, Mr. Bryant. If your accusations against Inspector Collins and Sergeant Fisher are possible, isn't it also equally possible that you and your wife could have compared notes?
Yeah, anything's possible. Only we didn't.
But you and your wife's version of what happened is also exactly similar in every detail. Now, isn't that also rather strange?
No, it's the truth.
I see. So it's strange that two police officers' stories should match, but not you and your wife's. Very odd. What about the bottle of ammonia, Mr. Bryant?
What about it?
Well, you knew it was there, didn't you?
No.
But your fingerprints were on it.
Do you remember everything you touch?
But the bottle's unusual, is it not? If one saw it, one would be curious, would one not? One would look at the label.
My obsessions don't lie in that direction, Mr. Logan.
No, your obsessions have about them a quality of paranoia, Mr. Bryant.
If you mean do I feel persecuted by the police, that's true, but with good reason.
Would you say that you were a violent man, Mr. Bryant?
No, not particularly.
Well, you've been convicted of violent crimes. One of them a robbery. Very similar to this.
I've been convicted, true. Not true that I was personally violent. I was a driver on that occasion, as the records will show.
But you were a party to violence. You knew there would be violence, and you went along with it. Is that not correct?
That still doesn't make me, personally, a violent man.
But you've also been convicted of personal violence. An assault on the police, to be exact.
Oh, look, the police charge people like me with assault if I look at them the wrong way.
Inspector Collins says that you punched him in the mouth.
Face.
In the face, while you were resisting arrest. Do you deny that?
Certainly. It was me who got the right-hander. Several, actually.
You were resisting arrest.
I was trying to resist being forcibly dragged from my own home to the police station without being formally arrested. Sergeant Fisher held my arms while Inspector Collins punched me in the stomach. That put me right out of the game. Then he hit me a few more times. When my wife tried to intervene, he just shoved her aside.
Really, Mr. Bryant?
Really, Mr. Logan.
Is there any point in your version of the events that took place that day which coincides with the version of the police?
They came to my house, they searched it. They took me to the police station. There's no argument about that. It just didn't happen the way they say.
And what happened when you arrived at the police station?
I was slung in a cell.
Just like that?
Just like that.
Did you ask to see any other police officers while you were there?
Yeah, I asked to see an officer of higher rank.
Was this request denied?
No, but it wasn't till I'd been held incommunicado for 6 hours in a cell, and without any refreshment, I might add, that someone came to see me.
Who was that?
Superintendent Carson.
What did you say to him?
I told him that I wanted to make a formal complaint against Collins and Fisher.
And did you?
I tried.
Tried?
He just laughed at me and said, "You must be joking."
The superintendent?
That's right.
Now, let's get this perfectly straight, Mr. Bryant. You asked to see a high-ranking police officer because you wished to make an official complaint, and he just laughed?
It doesn't surprise me, Mr. Logan. It's typical of many encounters I've had with the police.
But an official complaint against the police has to be recorded. That is the law, isn't it, Mr. Bryant?
Don't be so naive, Mr. Logan. And even if it were, the police investigate the police. It's just like any other profession. They look after their own.
Your paranoia seems to extend to the entire British police force.
And your sarcasm won't alter the facts in this case, Mr. Logan.
But the police, in this case, have told a tissue of lies from start to finish.
Exactly.
2 police officers, 3, if we count the superintendent, have all conspired to falsify the evidence against you.
Yes.
Would it surprise you to know, Mr. Bryant, that Inspector Collins has received 8 recommendations during his career in the police force?
So did John Reginald Christie, the special constable and mass murderer.
No more questions, Colonel.
Bryant, you will now return to the dock. Members of the jury, it is beyond doubt that a robbery did take place on the 6th of July in which £30,000 was stolen. What you have to decide, ladies and gentlemen, is whether Bryant was a party to that robbery or not. And let me remind you that, apart from the identification of Bryant by the bank guard, Rowan, there is no direct evidence that he was there at all. None. In a way, this case hinges almost entirely on the credibility of the main witnesses. Let us have a look at some of them. I don't think we need concern ourselves over much with the testimony of Mr. Mason. He was merely relating what took place on that unfortunate day. Then we have Mr. Rowan, the bank guard. He could say definitely that the balaclava was very similar to the one he tore from his attacker's face. On the matter of identification, he is quite definite. What happened with the photographs at the police station is another matter. But it is serious, and you will give it your earnest consideration. It was suggested by Bryant that Mr. Rowan made up his story in order to protect his credentials as a security guard, but Rowan has denied that. It is a matter for you to decide. We then come to Inspector Collins. What is crucial here is whether you believe him or not. He is, as we have heard, a police officer of some 16 years' service without a blemish on his record. Now, what you have to ask yourselves here is whether a man like that would jeopardize his whole career in order to get a conviction. He showed signs of bias against the defendant, I think you would agree. But was it, do you think, vindictiveness, carried to the point where he would invent evidence and lie under oath? Again, it is a matter for you. Now to the defense witnesses, Bryant himself and his wife. Was there a basic honesty and decency about her? Or is she a clever liar and actress? She says she bought the ammonia as a cleanser. Did she? And if she did, was that the only reason the ammonia was in the house? Ammonia was used on the robbery, you will remember. The fact that it was in the Bryant's household does not prove that it was bought for anything else other than cleaning. And now we have the testimony of Bryant himself. He is clearly a man of intelligence, and not without considerable experience of crime and the working of this court. In his favor, if you take a certain view, it must be admitted that it is not easy to come before a court and volunteer information about one's past which may damage one's character. Had he listened to counsel's advice, you members of the jury would have not known about his past history. What would you have thought of him then? Try as we might, As human beings, it is very difficult to be absolutely impartial in the face of evidence such as this. But this, members of the jury, is what you must try your utmost to do here today. Now, members of the jury, you will please retire and consider your verdict.
Members of the jury, who shall speak as your foreman?
I will.
Are you agreed upon your verdict?
We are.
On the first count of robbery, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
No!
On the second count of assault on the police, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You therefore find the prisoner guilty on both counts. That is the verdict of you all?
We do.
Bryant, is there anyone you wish to call on your behalf?
Will it do any good?
It might.
Why bother?
Harry George Bryant, you have been found guilty on the verdict of the jury. Have you anything to say why judgment should not be given to you according to the law?
Yes, plenty, but what's the point?
Harry George Bryant, you have been found guilty of taking part in what is now unhappily becoming a very common form of crime. You played for high stakes, and those who play for high stakes have to pay heavy penalties when the game is lost. On the first count, you will go to prison for 10 years. On the second count, 6 months concurrent. Take him down.